10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of This Is HCD. My name is Gerry Scullion and I'm a service design principal now based in Dublin, Ireland. In this episode, we caught up with the brilliant Patrick Quattlebaum, co-author of the fantastic new Rosenfeld media book, Orchestrating Experiences. Patrick is founder of StudioPQ and former managing director of the service design consultancy Adaptive Path before its acquisition, after of which he was the head of service design and senior director of design at Capital One. So don't worry, if you haven't read the book yet, there's no spoilers in this podcast, just brilliant entrees to the book itself. There's a lot to go through in this episode, so let's jump straight into the call. Patrick Quattlebaum, a very warm welcome to the This Is HCD podcast.
Hello.
Delighted to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So where are you coming from today?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia in the States.
Nice. So I've been following your career for a number of years while you were at Adaptive Path and since got acquired by Capital One, obviously. But let's go back to the very start and tell me a little bit how you got into design.
Well, I got into design relatively late, I guess. It was a second career. My original passion and degree was in English literature. I studied playwriting and film, and I had a specialty in Irish and British literature.
Nice.
So you being in Dublin, I've been there many times. I've been there on Bloomsday. I've walked the Joyce Path.
The canal.
Yeah,
Samuel
exactly.
Beckett.
Yeah, so I've done that kind of romantic, went past Beckett's birthplace, crazy stuff like that. So that was original passion. I also ran a business with my family business for a while, which is kind of where I realized in retrospect I got a lot of on-the-job training of what it's like to provide a service. And then I wanted a greater challenge and was looking back, going to graduate school in the late 90s, and I narrowed it down to urban design and the type of design I guess I do now. Ironically, one of the things that made me go the direction I did was I didn't know if I wanted to deal with the politics in urban design, but you can't avoid politics. I later learned.
Yeah.
So I went to the Georgia Institute of Technology here in Atlanta in a program that focused on the college was literature, communication, and culture. And so I thought that was a good gateway drug for me to get into design. It was a really interesting program because it focused on a lot of theory of how design and technology impact culture and vice versa. And so that was my entree into it. And almost 20 years later, my career's changed several times, but I'm glad I made that choice.
Yeah, nice. So at the moment you're set up StudioPQ, which,
yes.
So tell us a little bit about StudioPQ.
Yeah, well, it's me.
Yeah.
After spending a couple of years at Capital One after we were acquired, I really missed consulting and kind of the variety that comes with it. And even inside of Capital One, I consulted with our international businesses. So I spent a lot of time in London and Birmingham and also in Toronto. Helping those parts of the organization mature their design capabilities. But when I decided to move back east from San Francisco and just spend a year experimenting and not really worrying about what was next, but just working with interesting people and doing interesting work, finishing the book. But as that year has turned into, I've gone past that year, what I'm starting to collect here in Atlanta is a group of really interesting people that I work with a lot. And so later this year, I'll be announcing a new evolution of what I'm doing. So I can't talk about it yet, but
in the future.
But essentially what I've been focusing on in my individual practice, which is what I would like to involve more people in, is focusing on more strategic design with organizations, but in doing so, helping organizations build capabilities beyond digital product design. And so a lot of the work has been kind of a combination of management consulting to design leaders and their peers or bosses to help broaden their definition of design and what it can bring to the organization, and then doing side-by-side projects where I and others teach their employees how to use tools out of the service design toolkit, and especially how to work more collaboratively within their organization and the benefits of doing that. And
Excellent.
so that's been the thread I've been pulling, and want to do more and have a bigger impact than I can have on my own.
Yeah, so introduce and improve the capability internally. So how does that differ from, say, what you were doing with Adaptive Path and then Capital One? You know, going in as a big consultancy versus now, like how's it shaped your approach, and has it differed?
In some ways, it's similar. The time I was at Adaptive Path, we were really moving more and more to service design, but also had a lot of great partner companies who really wanted us to help them learn how to do these approaches beyond just doing training or coming to our conferences, but actually working side by side. So a lot of the projects that I did at Adaptive Path were of that nature. And then as we moved into Capital One, while the Adaptive Path was really well known, you were only talking about 18 designers in a company of tens of thousands of people. So for example, in working with the international parts of the business, it's a similar model to what I'm doing now, is coming in and having 2 or 3 people partner with the organization and work with, in some cases, business agile teams, and showing the benefits of having designers as part of those teams, as part of the brain trust of what the strategy for a service can be, about the benefits of looking, even if they're organized around product, the benefits of looking at things in terms of end-to-end experiences, and how to balance when you collaborate and when you work independently, so that you can create something bigger than any one of those teams that has like a little piece of the puzzle, how they can work better together to create a more harmonious experience across all those different touch points and channels. So,
which is a fantastic segue into today's topic, which is breaking down tribalism in the design community. And as we were chatting before, and I explained, this was one of the premises for me creating and founding This Is HCD, to really understand how we can work across, multiple disciplines such as product management and UX and service design and experience designers. And I can only imagine what it's like being on the internal side of an organization who's trying to hire a consultancy. And we're like, no, I'm a UXer. No, I'm an interaction designer, and so forth. So that tribalism in the design community is something that I'm really passionate about, trying to break down a little bit more and understand a little bit better. But maybe I could get your thoughts on that. And do you think tribalism is bad?
Well, yeah. To be honest, I go back and forth on that. And I think, as with anything, there's pros and cons to being extremely passionate about a part of what we call design, and wanting to passionately put your skills behind it to help it grow in the world. And it's sometimes easy to define something by what it's not than by what it is. And so I think that leads to that's what you do, but what we're really doing over here. But if you zoom out a little bit, a lot of this is about language. And even within, take service design, for example, there's a good debate going on about what even that really means, right? and on, I think it's interesting from my viewpoint, between, say, Europe and the US, there's this overlapping circles of, in the US, I think their user experience meant something bigger than just UX/UI in the beginning. And having been around for as long as I have, I can say that that label I felt fit me really well for a very long time. In Europe, service design means something bigger than broader than maybe some people in the US think of it as.
Yeah.
And then you have design thinking coming in as an interesting term that's loaded with very problematic if you're a designer, but very great for organizations in terms of getting more people interested in what design can do for their organization. I mean, I think one of the problems with the tribes is there's so much overlap that I think it's fair to say for something like the Service Design Network to be working really hard to define what service design is as a practice and starting certification and things like If you're not inside of that circle, then you can't do those things. And how you used to think about what you do within UX or another discipline, we do those things now is a reaction that a lot of people can have to that.
Yeah.
But it's not like I said, it's so great that there's so much passion to grow the influence of design in the world and define it more and more sharply. But if people lose the spirit of playing with one another towards very similar goals, then I think that no one will get to achieve what they're hoping to achieve by investing so much in their individual tribes.
Yeah, exactly. So to sum up, it's like a misalignment of goals effectively is the negative side of tribalism, is kind of my understanding of it. But how do you think tribalism can affect culture?
I feel for leadership within organizations when I work with them, because if you think of yourself, think of someone who's high up in an organization and is responsible for its ultimate success and where the company spends time. Their heads have to spin on a daily basis about agile, lean, Six Sigma, UX, service design thinking.
Yeah.
None of these things, majority of the people in large organizations probably have MBAs or come from a financial or even engineering background. All of these things probably seem useful and distracting at the same time. And I would say the downside is when these groups don't talk to one another. So I spend a lot of time in my consulting looking to connect those dots, especially, focusing a lot on service design. I focus a lot on the lean Six Sigma crowd within organizations and talk shop and talk about their work and how to balance, both within design and within process design and service design, you're looking at sequencing. And so that partnership of really what is the flow that you're trying to create for employees and customers to engage and play their roles in the service is something that you have to have a lot of dialogue around. And in fact, coming up with ways to partner together and design things together rather than being in these parallel worlds where process designers are creating their process maps and service designers are creating blueprints and maybe in UX are creating task flows. All of these things are really trying to solve the same problem, but you end up solving it three different ways. Yeah. But you need to look at it from all those different angles at the same time as well. And so the only way to do that is to start looking at how do you break down these lines that are between these groups and start working together towards the problem you're trying to solve and taking the best out of everyone's toolkits to do that.
I know at the very start of the book, there's a really, it was semi-contentious. When the book was released, I saw a lot of people tweeting about service design and CX and UX, and you're saying, hey, look, it's not about that. It's about getting the outcomes, which really resonated, as I said, like at the top of the episode, like getting towards and breaking down that tribalism. But what I really like about the book, and this is not a big sales pitch for the book, I wouldn't say this if I didn't mean it, but it's an excellent reference book for people who are trying to get into the industry, trying to learn more about orchestrating experiences. It's such a fantastic combination of two words. But what I really like is about the pragmatic workshop activities that are related to each stage of the journey. But what I wanted to ask you was, when you're looking in tribalism, the hierarchy, we're trying to flatten the hierarchy. Who decides what workshop to do and when? Is it the service designer, or is it the product manager? And it's a common. What do you think?
Well, obviously, it depends partly on that organization, and I would say in many organizations in the U.S., since that's what I'm most familiar with, what I see is certainly service design, and to some degree still, more strategic design that's beyond just designing for the interface. In many organizations, it's not an expectation of design. It's where design is looking to sell internally. This is something that we can offer that will make things better.
Yeah.
And so in the end, if you were looking to do one of these workshops within your organization, it would certainly be partnering with the person who has the most influence in ensuring that the workshop isn't an academic exercise, but it actually is going to lead to action. So in some organizations, like one I'm working with now, they have owners of specific customer journeys. So that would be the partner to work with and say, and in most organizations, what I recommend is that that person should have service design or design, process, technology, change management, like key partners that are their advisors. And then showing how these workshops can help that journey, or if you're working with a product owner who may be pulling together other product owners beyond just what they own to start looking at the bigger picture, they need to be with you and encouraging everyone that this is worth their time to contribute. And that so you're in service of that person who ultimately likely has the budget, the influence to ensure that, again, that workshop is part of a flow towards making things and putting them out in the world rather than, a feel-good experience where everyone got together and thought through, what are our touch points, and then nothing ever happened after that.
I guess what I'm hearing there, it's really interesting because not always can we be brought into an organization and looking at that 10x visibility of the entire ecosystem and the systems thinking type of view. Sometimes
right.
we're brought in at like 3x or 2x or 4x, or wherever it is we're hovering around, and we're trying to do an ecosystem within an ecosystem, and it's maybe like the brother and sister of the projects that are working parallel with that. So you think it's a service design person that really should be up to championing those other projects to get alignment in what's possible?
Yes. I mean, that's a big message in the book is, regardless if you're a designer, if you see the value and really can take it upon yourself to help get people zooming out even one more level than they normally do and to work together, and you can help facilitate that, instigate it, facilitate it. That is such a valuable skill within organizations where often people kind of have their heads down on their area of responsibility. So for example, a few years ago, I was working with an organization that had taken the journey that's from first touch and perhaps earlier of buying a product or engaging in a service through 90 or 120 days after becoming a customer. But they had taken that journey and chopped it up across 4 different teams so that one team literally owned when you push the button to say, yep, I want that product, through when it is delivered to you. Now, that's essentially, and then setting them up as separate business agile teams to then go fast. So my team was brought in to work with that team, and they were in the middle of the journey. So the first thing I did was held a workshop where we brought in the other teams.
Yeah.
Not the entire teams, but the leaders of those teams. And we said, bring a couple more people from your team. And we did essentially walk through what the objectives that the team that we were doing the project with were asked to do. But we said, look, when we start to look at this, what's going to happen is we're going to challenge these divisions that you've made. For example, you have a team looking at onboarding, but onboarding really begins when you're first interacting with the customer. You can be smart about introducing them to your company and getting information so that the thing that you now call onboarding is something that really can spread out across the entire journey. So we don't want to take these divisions and work within those constraints. And especially when we go out to learn from customers about their experiences, we're not going to say, okay, so let's start with where you push this button. Like, that's not how we're going to engage with them. We're going to learn things that will be valuable to you and your plans. So in that workshop, what we did was we said, look, you need to start thinking of this as one experience. So let's do a few exercises to build some hypotheses around that. So we built a hypothesis, said, what's a hypothesis of what is the actual journey? What are the key touch points? You're 4 separate teams, but let's workshop some common experience principles. Like, how are you making decisions? What is the nature of the types of experiences that you want to create for people? And then we talked about, how do we engage you going forward? We invited some of them to come into the research so they could learn firsthand. They were in every workshop after that. And what it ended up doing was allowed them to understand that while they were organized in these 4 teams, they were essentially one team. each with a focus.
Yeah.
I would have reorganized them, but that was a recommendation. But in doing the project, that they could think of it more holistically, and that they each improved their strategies, their backlogs, et cetera, through working more collaboratively, but letting this one team kind of take the lead on looking at that bigger picture.
That's a really interesting approach, and it's definitely something that I've experienced before. Like, you're not being able to change the world, but actually just being able to change what's in front of you and getting other people and other teams to be part of that conversation is really important. But another piece in the book that I found really valuable, Patrick, was the workshopping of the experience principles. And I know from my own experience over the years, it's very easy to fall into the category of just getting simplicity and ease of use and so forth out of those workshops. So let's walk through a little bit more of the steps that you outline in the book and how you can avoid that from happening.
Sure. And I should note that obviously the context is really important, especially with experience principles.
Yeah.
Now in the book, the chapter is written as part of a section that's going through a flow in which it's assumed that you are leveraging insights from understanding the needs of whoever you're designing for, customers, employees, or both, and likely qualitative research.
Yeah.
And it assumes also that your organization has some articulation of what its brand is, for good or bad. You see good brand principles. You see poor ones. I've seen brand teams put together what they call design principles.
How do they differ, brand, design, and experience principles?
Well, again, it's design principles. I think there's probably something in the book about this, but design principles and experience principles to some degree can often be used interchangeably. I'm a big fan, and Chris is a big fan of experience principles because it feels bigger than what designers use to make design decisions. So when you put the word design in front of principles, what I've found is it can lead to them not being embraced by non-designers.
It creates an exclusivity. Yeah.
Yeah. So the spirit of it is that we're all making decisions that result in experiences for customers, and we're steward of those experiences. So what are the guiding principles that we use to make decisions, inspire ideas, do detailed work on making the things the tangible and intangible things that people interact with, and that the hope is that by all following those principles that you mitigate the risk of being schizophrenic. Yeah. Now that's the same goal of brand, right?
Yeah.
I would say in general, and these are broad strokes, from a branding sense, often that's coming from I see this more and more, I see more interesting approaches being taken down in the branding world, but traditionally it's more of an inside out view. So how do we want to be seen by the world? It often starts, and it should have a good tie to the culture of the organization so that you can actually live into that brand. While experience principles, in the way that we talk about them, are taking that view of, as an organization, here is how we want to be seen and how we hope to interact with people, and putting with that, here's how people, what they need when they interact with you and the type of experiences that they're hoping to have. And that the experience principles then look to how do we unite these viewpoints into a common set of principles. Now, where you started with the question around, simple, easy to use, often what doing these workshops, or even just beginning to help people understand the need for experience principles, is to list many of those out and say, these are heuristics. What we provide in the service or product is much more complex than what they should have to worry about. That should be part of the magic of designing something well. Mm-hmm. Of course, we wouldn't want to create something that is difficult to use, unless there's the dark arts. Some people
practice
use in some ways. Yeah, but I think it's like when we're thinking about our experience principles, what we need to think about is putting more language around it and concreteness to say what really matters in the experiences we're looking to provide. And if reducing complexity is an important thing in our organization for everyone to remember, because they often lean towards complexity, then let's find a way to communicate that and create a principle that is contextual to us, so that when we say something like, we need to be a guide for someone in the experience, the language that goes with that is critical, because you want them to be rememberable. You don't have people to remember entire paragraphs. So you want something in naming the principle that's memorable, but the language that goes with that is really important. And then showing examples of what that is or would be like is very important. And then working with parts of the organization to say, if you are in the call center and it's a conversation, or you're designing a product and it's unassisted interacting with an interface, going even deeper and additional details and criteria to apply those principles, within that context, within the larger context of the organization.
Yeah, excellent.
So that's I say, like, of course, there's these heuristics, like in working with companies, like there are a set of common heuristics that make services good in most circumstances. But as soon as you start to think about your organization and what you're trying to accomplish and what your capabilities are, and you're looking at who you're designing for and their needs, what you should start to find is your specific language and formula for doing that. So, there's, in film, there's lots of romantic comedies and there's a formula to them, but they're not all literally the same, right? And there's good ones and bad ones. And, you have to really think about how you do the things that often are successful, but then what you're doing, making it unique and differentiated and something that really reflects who you are and and the needs of the people that you're trying to meet.
Absolutely. And it also helps streamline the process of when an idea enters the conversation in the business, to gain that alignment, as in, like, is this something that we do? Does this fit our principles?
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's the real power of them is being used. They're a tool, and they can be wielded in many different circumstances. So, like finishing up an engagement right now where my team is, there's working with the Journey team that already has a backlog. And not at the product feature level, but more at the saga epic level of, like, big things you're thinking about doing that would be across a large, complicated journey. And so in working with them, one of the things that we're doing right now is we work with them to come up with principles in addition to their brand principles. And we're doing a deep analysis of that backlog and saying, okay, here's where you have great alignment with the principles. Here's where we're seeing less alignment. And then making recommendations about where they should be investing or not investing, how to better sequence some of the things that they're doing, some of the other work we've done in filling in some of the gaps. But the principles are something that we're using as a litmus test for everything that they're thinking about. And the nice thing about it is that these principles were made with them based off of research in which they were involved in the research directly. And so they really feel ownership of them rather than as outsiders helping them, like, these are what the consultants, gave us. Their fingerprints are all over them, and that's going to help them
get adopted,
remain viable and be adopted and they're being adopted in the work that we're doing. And that's always a sign that you're on the right track.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're coming towards the end of the conversation, Patrick. And I don't know if you've listened to some of the other episodes, but we always ask 3 questions towards the end of the episode, just to get to know the person a little bit better. So hopefully I'm not putting you in the spot too much here, but I'm going to ask you, what is the one professional skill that you wish you were better at?
Oh, so many. I would say always get better at my stage of my career. I'm really trying to get better and better at working with higher levels of the organization and influencing, and really being better at identifying and listening to and empathizing with everything that these leaders have to juggle and balance, and how complex the decisions they have to make, and all the different people that are trying to provide them input. Yeah, and that I'm one of those people. Yeah, true. And so I feel fortunate in my career that I'm at a stage where I'm consulting at very high levels in organization. I'm still learning how to be better at that, and I'm naturally an introvert, so it's something that I have to get better at the skills of using 30 minutes with an executive over lunch and being on and having clear objectives and all of those things. So I try to get better and better at that by just jumping in the deep end.
That's a great answer. So the second question is, what is the one thing in the industry that you wish you'd be able to banish?
UX/UI. I think and this is, you can tell me if it's true outside of the US, but in the US...
I'm going through this at the moment, Patrick. In Ireland and Europe, it's UX/UI is what they know. It's really interaction design, but they call it user experience. So sorry to cut across you. Go on. That combination has led to, in some ways, it's made it very difficult for practitioners to grow into being having a greater strategic influence in their organizations. And all the different types of design we do is extremely valuable. And if you are amazing at detailed interaction design and very effective at using research and should be partnering with, say, a product owner to not just execute the backlog, but helping them define it and the strategies that are leading to why you're doing what you're doing. We need more of you too. It is difficult to do both in organizations because of the way they're run and how few designers there are. And so, from what I see, the UI kind of anchors a lot of designers and they have to make a choice. So I see designers, and interaction designers is what I would call them as well, who will leave the design team and go to research teams in order to have more influence over product strategy. And I think that's unfortunate. So that's what comes to mind. But I think that conflation of those two different things are unfortunately means the roles, when you look at what people are doing, often it's more UI focused than some people would like to do. And for the people that focus on that, it's probably less of a barrier. Nice. And the last question is, what is the message you'd give to emerging design talent for the future?
Get a variety of experience. And that could be inside of an organization, that could be outside of an organization, and explore, going back to where we started the discussion, explore all those different tribes. And not just within the design world. For example, if your background is, say, in interaction design, and you normally swim in circles of the IXDA or maybe human-computer interaction, go to service design meetups, go to customer experience meetups, I spent a lot of time a few years ago just spending a lot of time with business analysts. I was just interested in how they look at the world and how we could work better together, and speaking at a couple of their events and writing a blog post for a blog that focuses on that community. Get a feel for how everybody approaches solving problems, because as you move deeper into your career and the more that companies are wanting to be more collaborative, knowing what your core skills are and working on your strengths, which is what you should always do. Everyone has superpowers. But the more you can understand who you're working with, how they look at the world, how you can solve problems with them, how you can be the babblefish within your organization, that is an incredibly valuable thing you can bring to an organization in helping connect those dots. And like I said, often it's about empathy for others that you work with and understanding their mindset and really understanding the words that they're using and how they connect to what you're trying to do. So that would be my advice, in addition to whatever type of design you do and your passion for it and getting better and better at that. Spend some time looking at that bigger picture and understanding who your collaborators are and find ways to get better and better at collaborating with them.
Excellent. Patrick, thank you so much for your time. If people want to find you online, how can they do that?
You can find me if you type in StudioPQ.com. That'll send you to a page about me in the book. And I'm on the LinkedIn and Twitter, PT Quattlebaum. And those are the places you can find me first. And
we'll drop all those links into the show notes as well. Patrick, thanks so much for your time.
Great.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you'd like to be part of the conversation or community, hop on over to thisishcd.com, where you can request to join the Slack channel and help shape future episodes and connect with other designers around the world. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.